Good afternoon. It is Monday. Lots going on again this week, and it's time once again for Saving America with Dr. David Schein. So, David, we're on a roll here, and it seems like the more you do, the more there is to talk about. So welcome again to Saving America.
Thank you, Sandy. Yes, it's been another busy week, and it seems like the topics just keep rolling out. And of course, we want to keep these reasonably short, so we don't want to try and talk about everything every week. But boy, it's sure been entertaining out there.
Each week there will be 3 segments. We're going to talk about what's the latest in the news, what rumors are going on, what are you hearing, and what construes a rumor in that topic. And then our last one's going to be something about the facts, just the facts. Here's your textbook. You want to know how to vote in November? You want to know who to vote for? Here's your textbook to look at history, look at what's been done in the past, and make your decision so that history does not repeat itself. So lots of great information in here compiled and written by Dr. David Schein, who is an author, as we can see. He's also a professor at the University of St. Thomas here in Houston, and he has his own business. He's an attorney. He's a consultant for small businesses, and I don't know, David, how you have any time at all to have any personal life of any kind, but I am so glad you had time to work this podcast into your schedule, because I believe that what you're doing is definitely going to make history. And saving America, what can we do? What can you do during these times?
You say hey, and that's your final answer?
So we're going to start today off, David, with talking about the Republican National Convention, which just ended last week. So tell us did you get to watch most of it?
No, I actually, as you mentioned in your kind introduction, have too much work to go sit and watch things that are that slow. I'm also not a fan of watching paint dry either. And so the Republican convention was probably one of the most predictable bits of entertainment or non-entertainment, if you will, recently. I think that if I had been a political advisor, maybe the new Karl Rove, if you will, Karl Rove, of course, credited with getting George W. Bush elected twice to the White House, and is not a fan of Trump's, as many of you may know, is a political consultant and one of the people you see on Fox News and other channels. But if I was a political consultant in the Republican campaign, I would have changed out the vice president. Mike Pence is a good guy. There's absolutely nothing wrong with Mike Pence. It's just that he's a snoozer. And I think that the Republican Party would have done itself well to have said, Mike, you have served us well. We appreciate your service, and brought in either Blackburn or Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley did speak last week. She is a future star. She is my candidate for the next Republican presidential candidate, just so you know, either her or Blackburn, Marsha Blackburn. And I think the Republican Party would do itself well. The other thing is that a couple of things that Trump did that I thought were very interesting. He issued some pardons. As you know from my book, I continue to be critical of presidential pardons. I'd like to take that power away from the president and make it a more orderly process. But I find it hilarious, as I mentioned last week, that the Democrats have been jumping all over Trump's pardons when they have forgotten about the incredible pardon of Mark Rich by Bill Clinton on his way out of office. An absolute disgrace. In fact, Bill Clinton should have been prosecuted for that paid pardon, by the way. So in any event, the Republican convention did not do anything in particular good. It didn't do anything particularly bad. As I mentioned in our discussions before we went live, that the only thing that pumped up the Democrat convention was the appointment of Kamala Harris, and I've already talked about that. So we're down to brass tacks. The polls are still showing Biden ahead. Of course, the tracking is largely dedicated to the swing states. We know which states are going to vote Republican, which states are going to vote Democrat. So the real issue becomes the states that we're not sure about at the moment. And part of the challenge is to turn a predictable state into a swing state and to make sure a swing state goes in your direction, depending on which party that you're rooting for. So I think this is going to be pretty interesting for the next 6 to 8 weeks. And I'm not making any predictions. I think that if I was to make any prediction at all, I would say that Trump is stronger than the media is indicating, and Trump is stronger than the polls are indicating. But that does not mean that Trump can sit on his laurels and hope he'll get elected in a couple months. Having said that, I do want to note that the stock market had the best August since 1984, the best August since 1984, and that did not come from Fox News. Just so you know, that did not come from Fox News. That came from CNBC. And the other thing is that the stock market, as of this week, has made up all of its losses from early this year. All of the COVID crash losses. Remember, the market, which is at 28,600 today, was down below 20,000 at the pit of the COVID-19 disaster, and it is back to 28,600. This is a major accomplishment. Does that mean the economy is good shape? Absolutely not. Does that mean there aren't 10 million Americans struggling to pay their bills? Absolutely not. But in terms of confidence, the market tends to predict what we think will happen, and I think it's saying we predict the economy will do well in the future.
I was going to ask, when you said that about replacing the vice president, has that ever been done?
It's been brought up in the past, and in fact, Dick Cheney was not a very popular vice president. And you may remember there was the incident while he was hunting where when you fire a shotgun, it fires a spray of small pellets, and he fired a shotgun close enough they were bird hunting in Texas here, I believe, and he fired the shotgun close enough that some of the pellets caught the face of one of the other fellows that he was hunting with, and it was a big incident and all that. I think Dick Cheney, parallel to Mike Pence, had a lot of very positive characteristics, certainly a very strong individual, very accomplished individual, but probably didn't do the Bush ticket much good by the second term. So they didn't do it, but there was a discussion about doing it. I think that today, I didn't hear any realistic discussion about replacing Mike Pence. And I believe there's a cliche, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But to me, the struggle in the polls for a president running for re-election, it should be a walk in the park, and it's not.
And to close out today's podcast, we have one more segment left, and it's called Just the Facts.
Well, we were going to talk about the rumor first.
Oh, we did the rumor. Oh, that's right. We skipped the rumor. Oh, no.
Don't skip the rumor. I'll do it quick.
That's a good. No, you don't have to do anything quick. No, we want to hear the rumor, because I want to hear what rumor you're going to talk about, because there's lots of rumors going on.
Sure. Well,
the weakest link. Goodbye.
Well, we had a lot of choices, but I picked one that is very hot this morning, Monday, August 31st, and that is the Democrats are desperately trying to pin the violence in American cities on Trump. So the new rumor this weekend, today, is that Trump is causing the violence in American cities. And it's so hideously stupid. So you have America's cities, many of which are located in states completely controlled by Democrats. California has virtually no opposition. Both houses and the governor are controlled by Democrats. That's, I think, largely true in Oregon and Washington states, where there's been violence in their major cities, Seattle and Portland. And so the Democrats control the cities where the violence is taking place. They're in states where the Democrats largely control. And yet they're saying somehow Trump's responsible for this. And when I talked recently about the new American Civil War, one of the things that I'm concerned about, and I think that the Portland mayor, who clearly is one of the least competent people in America, and that's saying something given our incredibly poor performance by the public sector, is trying to scare Trump from doing something that I think may happen. And remember, I say in the new American Civil War, we have people who are denying the majority of American citizens their rights to freedom, their rights to property, their rights to education, and so forth. And that it is the responsibility of the federal government, if the states and localities will not protect its American citizens, to go in and do that. And I would strongly support Trump going into Portland and putting it under martial law for the indefinite future, at least in the next 10 to 30 days, to bring order to that beautiful American city. And again, I was there almost exactly 2 years ago, a great American city that has been ruined by incompetent administration and by anarchy. We're not talking about any type of ordered protest. And certainly if you call that a protest regarding racial equality, Martin Luther King and people like him would certainly disagree with you. And I lived through that generation. I know what that looks like. So anyway,
Yeah.
but I think that's the rumor of the week, and I think it's a hideous one.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. So now we go to the facts. And so thank you for making sure I stay on track there.
Just the facts, ma'am.
So one of the things we're hearing so much about is school starting back up, higher education starting back, all of the things that are going on. So what are the facts about the education and what's going on in this country with going back to school?
Well, as you know, I'm in addition to my many roles, I'm a professor and an associate dean, and I track enrollment at our own school very carefully. We, at the last minute, were switched to online until September 20th. Many of our classes will be online for the whole semester. And I'm looking forward to returning to the classroom right now. Last I heard, for my 2 in-classroom classes, that date would be Monday, September 21st. So I'm waiting to see if that's actually going to happen.
Yes.
And so we've had some false starts in North Carolina, in Georgia. There have been some very well-known schools that went back in mid-August and had some surges. So part of the problem is that with regard to college and higher education, first of all, this is not an even situation. There are ways to control access to colleges. There are ways to have more orderly enrollment in dormitories and things like that. I talked to a colleague of mine in South Dakota, and they are back in the classroom full on. And it doesn't look too bad. The students are required to wear a mask. The faculty are required to wear a mask while they're teaching, but they're full on in the classroom. And I think many Central American, Central Midwestern universities and places in lower population centers will be able to return in classroom and be okay. Where I see the problem is some of these big party schools, unfortunately, and big football schools, that they have not controlled, and the students have not appreciated the magnitude or the severity of the problem. And I know some universities are putting in saying, look, we're going to bring you back to campus, but you guys have got to play along with us. You've got to wear your mask. You've got to socially distance, no 100 people in a bar designed for 50 people or, big gatherings like that. So I think that we're going to sort this out a little bit over the next few weeks, but I do expect that by the end of the semester, I think most of our major higher education institutions that are set up to come back into the classroom will do so, and will do so safely. Now, regarding sports has been very spotty. Some of the sports have said they're going to come back. Other sports have said that they're going to delay until the spring or lose whole seasons. Some of my concerns there include the fact that if they're student athletes and they have athletic scholarships, I'm concerned about the school's contract with the athlete. So are they going to ship these students away from school because they didn't qualify for the scholarship, because they didn't play the sport this season? And I don't confront that at the school I'm at, because we're in a division in the NCAA that does not permit athletic scholarships. So our students have to be scholar athletes, as we say. And I came out of the Ivy League. Ivy League does not allow athletic scholarships either. So I'm used to that in my early college days. So I think at higher ed is going to sort it out, and we're going to make that work over time. Most of the schools are planning to stop having classes by Thanksgiving, including my own, at least on campus. The rationale behind that is the original prediction for COVID is we weren't expecting the bounce this summer. We were expecting this thing to be pretty flat over the summer into this fall. And then when we got to the colder weather and people started being closed in, that it would arise. So we're still on that calendar. So again, we had the terrible spike over the summer, which, by the way, does appear to be very consistently abating pretty much throughout the United States, as many people predicted. And a couple things about that is we still have a lot of younger people. It is true that very young people can get COVID-19. It is true college students could get COVID-19. However, and I heard a medical expert on this in the last 48 hours respond to that question and say, when you have younger people, their immune systems are in better condition. Their bodies are in better condition. In most cases, again, excluding the person with an autoimmune disorder that kicks in early, very few people have autoimmune disorders even before age 30 or 40. So the point is, though, is the vast majority of your population, from your little people, your pre-K, K, through college, the risk factors are still relatively low. So let's be careful. Let's bring them back. One of the things that I've observed, because I have little grandchildren, is we cannot help these children learn if they're locked up in their houses. And my little grandson went to pre-K camp this summer, and for a couple of weeks, and he was just so energized by playing with other little people his size and interacting with those kids and all that. And that learning experience, that interacting experience, is extremely valuable, and we cannot recreate that online. We cannot recreate that by locking them up at home. The other problem that I see, and it's interesting because one of the other trends I track is housing, and there is a exodus from American cities. And one of the discussions is Americans are looking for bigger houses, so they're moving suburban and rural to get to bigger houses. Part of that driver is they're spending more time in their houses. But it was interesting because I was watching a news report about a month ago, and this so-called education expert was saying, well, here's what we need. And this lady was in a very pristine little room, and it had a very pristine little desk sitting in the middle of it with a nice pristine little chair and a little laptop computer and one little lamp. And she said, isn't this terrific? This is what you need for your child to participate in education online. And, I'm sitting there, and now granted, I came from a large family. I'm the oldest of 7 children. We had the 3 boys in one bedroom and 4 girls in the other bedroom. I don't think we had one workspace like that across the 7 of us. Now, the normal American family today is 2 or 3 children, the ones that have kids in school. I don't think most American families have 3 workspaces, 1 for each child, which is what this person was, this so-called education expert was supposedly talking about. So I think that, overall considerations, we need to get our kids back in school. I think the little kids overall really need to be back in school. I think we can do some things with the high school kids and maybe have them rotate out. But by golly, we got to think of something to do with them, because one of the things I will tell you is when you got little teenagers out there with the hormones going, we're going to have all sorts of weird things happening out there. Teenage pregnancy, which has largely been under control lately. I'm not making any predictions on that one for the future, but we do need to make sure there are alternative activities for these folks. And of course, some of those activities included high school sports and things like that, and high school activities which are suspended or postponed. And so perhaps the safest place for them is to be in the classroom and maybe provide some special classes, some enhancement classes that maybe are not traditional high school courses, but teaching people how to cook. Home ec has largely disappeared from high schools. Teaching them how to do woodworking, another skill that's disappeared from a typical American high school, and maybe do some things like that so that we keep these kids active and involved and safe.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, because I know there's been a lot written, and there's probably some huge statistics on the importance of a social life in a person,
Absolutely.
in a young person. So, so yes, I totally agree with that. I think that we don't want to see what could happen if kids have no social life. So thank you for that, David, because whatever age, whether they are little people like you were talking about your grandson, I have little people, grandchildren, as well as teenage grandchildren, and all of them are very social as far as, their interaction with other people. I think it's amazing. I think it's really important that takes place in their lives. So thank you. Very good. And what do we have to look forward to for next week?
Let's say, just thinking about that, I haven't really talked about that, but I think we'll talk about international relations. There has been some consistent commentary from the media that Trump has damaged America's relations around the world. And so we're going to talk about foreign relations and the United States, and specifically the Trump administration.
I'm sure the problem is not finding the rumors, it's deciding which one to use. Absolutely. With all of the internet and social media and the news, 24/7 cable news, it's deciding what we're going to use for this show, not can we find something to talk about. So
precisely.
David, you are amazing. How you keep up with all of this and do everything that you do is just amazing. So thank you for being so generous as to share your thoughts, your all that's going on with you and all of this. Thank you for sharing that. And remember what he has shared previously in his book, The Decline of America. Get your copy today on Amazon and study what did Woodrow Wilson do? What crisis did he face? Who else faced a pandemic? There's been others before. What did those presidents do? So all the way from Woodrow Wilson to Barack Obama, here's The Decline of America. So David has graded them each one. Nobody made an A. I'll give you a little clue. So get it, research it, see what other presidents did in the face of a pandemic, in the face of racial injustice and racial violence, in the face of protesting. They've all dealt with it before. So go read and see what they did about it and make up your mind for the election coming up in a couple of months. So David, thanks again. Look forward to next week. And if you are watching this on Facebook Live or you're on YouTube, wherever you're watching the video, please subscribe and send us a comment and send us some questions if you have something you'd specifically like Dr. Schein to talk about on the next Saving America.